9 people have been killed in Ukraine after a Russian drone hit a bus in Sumy in the north of the country. Kyiv condemned the attack, accusing Russia of deliberately killing civilians. Moscow says it was targeting military equipment. The strike came hours after delegates from the two countries met in Istanbul for the first direct peace talks in 3 years. Our correspondent Stuart Smith joins us now from Kyiv. Stuart, what else has Ukraine had to say about this latest attack?
President Zelensky has been talking directly about this, and he says, based on the information he's getting, preliminary though he stresses it is, 9 people were killed in that attack and 7 of them wounded. He said of those that died, 3 of them were part of a family, a mother, father and daughter, all killed in that attack. Of the wounded, he says, many of them suffering from burns and other serious injuries. President Zelensky alleges it was a deliberate attack by Russian drone, because he says it was unmistakably a minibus carrying civilians. A regional official from Sumy says they were bringing people away from the front lines when Russian forces are advancing as part of a evacuation trip to try and help people get away. Therefore, the bus was mostly filled, it's claimed by authorities in Sumy, by elderly people. President Zelensky says this is why he says allies and other Western leaders should put pressure on Russia to stop the killing, and he says without stronger sanctions there'll be no pressure on Russia that will encourage Moscow towards diplomacy.
And Stuart, there have been some details from that meeting in Istanbul. What have we learned?
That's right. The Reuters news agency with some key detail about what was discussed based on its Ukrainian sources that were at the delegation. It's outlining 4 key points that it says the Russian delegation said they were interested in. The first was about the need for the removal of all Ukrainian troops in all 4 regions of Ukraine that Russia has annexed, which includes even areas in 3 of those regions where the Ukrainian armed forces still hold territory. The second point was about international recognition of those 4 annexed territories plus Crimea at the international stage by Ukraine. The third was about Ukraine becoming a neutral state, one that couldn't host allied forces nor any weapons of mass destruction. And the fourth was that all sides in the conflict should renounce any claims to any sort of compensation for war damages. As well as that, the Ukrainian lawmaker says he picked up on something else the Russian delegation said, which is that while at the moment it's claiming 5 regions of Ukraine, the Russians warned that it could be more regions in the future, such as that Sumy province, if Ukrainian officials do not agree to Russia's demand. The Kremlin has declined to comment on the specifics of what was discussed and hasn't confirmed nor denied that these were the main points. But that is, according to Reuters and other news sources here in Ukraine, what lawmakers from Kyiv and negotiating parties were being told. It differs considerably from what Ukraine wants, which is an immediate 30-day ceasefire, and also children that have been taken to Russia from those regions to be returned. But there was one piece of good news, which we've heard from the military intelligence here in Ukraine, that will happen next week, which is a 1,000 for 1,000 prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine.
Thank you for that, Stuart. Stuart Smith, our correspondent in Kyiv. And let's get the view from Russia now, and our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Dasha, after that meeting in Istanbul, there are reports from the Kremlin that President Putin could meet the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Well, that's right. In the first public statements, the Kremlin, after the talks in Istanbul, the Kremlin has said that indeed there could be a meeting between the Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. But this meeting, according to Dmitry Peskov, Kremlin spokesman, could become the result of the work of both sides, provided certain agreements have been reached. We also understand that Moscow still has the question with regard to the legitimacy of the person who will be signing the document on the Ukrainian side. Those questions have not been removed so far. But meanwhile, the Kremlin is saying that the work on the settlement following those contacts in Istanbul are continuing. And first, there has to be the implementation of the arrangements that have been reached in Istanbul, that is the prisoner swap, as well as the detailed vision of the ceasefire implementation that should be listed by both sides. And Moscow says it is not planning to change the composition composition of its delegation. And for now, they say that the next round will depend on this groundwork being conducted by both sides following those talks in Turkey. We also understand that the Kremlin will inform if there is the potential phone call between President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump. Having said that, there has been a tremendous role underscored by the Russian officials of the United States, suggesting that Washington has been instrumental in bringing the Ukrainian side to the negotiating table. We have heard that there was a phone conversation between Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in which they have pledged to continue the work, and the Russian side has informed the Americans about how those talks have proceeded. Again, we're waiting for the continuation of that groundwork and obviously the movements with regards to further steps that the sides could take in moving forward towards the settlement of this conflict.
Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, thank you.